Sam, thanks for joining me today. Been looking forward to this conversation with you. For everybody that is watching, with Sam Zellner today, he's the founder and CEO of Inspire IP. He was formerly at AT&T. He was the director of innovation, and was an inventor of over 200 patents. And we just wanted to talk to you about Inspire IP and kind of your background is pretty amazing.
Well, thank you, John. I really appreciate this opportunity. I always enjoy speaking with you.
Awesome, awesome. So you've always your career's been tied directly to the leading edge of telecommunications. So can you tell us how you got started and involved with that and how you became an inventor on more than 200 patents?
Yeah, sure, John. So, yeah, it's sort of funny how things happen in one's life. I started off on in telecommunications way back in the Bell system, and was working with new technology. And along that path, started with this technology called cellular.
Mhm.
And in the early days, I won't even tell you how early it was, but it was early.
Wow.
And so, worked with that, and I think when you start working with that, with new technologies in general, you a lot of your barriers to thinking creatively and what's possible, you start getting conditioned, and so fortunately for me, that happened with me, and so it gave me a lot of opportunities to come up with new inventions, and
Hmm.
really enjoyed that.
Hmm. So can you talk about some of the more interesting patents?
Yeah, one of the things I really enjoyed and was interesting was at the time, advanced 911 service was coming about. And in particular, it was a big problem, obviously, in cellular when people called 911 and there was no location. So the police had
Hmm.
lots of problems. So the FCC was saying, hey, cellular companies, you need to provide location, particularly on 911 calls.
Hmm.
And our marketing department at the time was like, "Ah, this is just such a pain. Why do we have to do this? It's a big investment." Ugh. They complained about it, and it just struck me as that's interesting. It seems like location, and of course now it seems obvious, but at the time I guess it wasn't obvious.
Hmm.
Location would be very helpful for lots of things. So I
Hmm.
started thinking about it, and uh, right away I thought, well, obviously people could be using it for advertising, and then that led me to think, one of the things is it's always good to think about the next generation. So
Right.
you take what the first generation is and you assume that's there. So then what will people want? So I thought, well, what would I want? Well, if people could see my location, that would make me a little uncomfortable for advertising. So I'd like some sort of way to block it or
Hmm.
block my identity or things like that. So I did a lot of filing around those types of blocking and hiding my identity. Um, and then I also thought about, well, gosh, if the system could see me leaving, wouldn't it be nice for my home to understand that and maybe turn down the heat or turn off the
Right.
air conditioning, or if I'm coming home, turn on the air conditioning and all that.
Right.
So filed some patents around using location to execute an action, and uh, I was very proud of those patents, and I guess Google thought they were pretty good too, and we actually sold them off to Google. So
Right.
that was
Right.
a nice acknowledgement of some value there.
Yeah, it does, back then, I mean, there was no idea of a Google Maps or any kind of location.
Oh,
There were
it was
no display screens on cell phones, and cell phone technology is barely,
it was still early days. Yeah, that's right. I
yeah.
was working on believe it or not, working on the standards for a browser on a cell phone. And again, hard to imagine, there was any
Yeah,
question, but at the time, there was a lot of question. More
right.
recently, some of the things that I worked on that, I think have a lot of application today. And one of the things you see as an inventor is sometimes you're way ahead of the curve, maybe too far ahead. Was my parents were getting older, and I got concerned. A lot of people calling them up, asking them about things, as like a lot of people's parents get, and worried about them. And so the thought was, why couldn't we have some technology that would listen to a conversation, or somebody at the door, and figure out whether I should trust this person?
Hmm.
Or, if my mother or father is giving away information, like, oh, here's my social security number, have the system, blank that out and say, oh, no,
Oh,
we're
wow.
not
Yeah.
sharing that. Yeah, so file a patent on something like that, which I think is interesting. Also, filed a patent on the whole idea of seeing somebody in your yard and asking yourself, is that the meter reader or is that a burglar? And having some technology in there to do some analysis to say, is it reasonable to have that person in my backyard
Right.
or wherever it is? So,
Right.
a
That's
lot of things. Now, I'll tell you the truth. I haven't seen anybody doing it yet, but
mhm.
I feel pretty confident, with AI and everything else coming, that's going to come.
It's pretty amazing. Um, Probably many people won't understand kind of what you were doing. So basically, as director of innovation at AT&T, you were working with a group of inventors and people that are highly technologically savvy programmers, and you would work with them to figure out new ideas, basically what is going to be the future, and you patent that, and then you license it or sell it, right?
That's right. So I had a team. We were in the intellectual property group
Mm-hmm,
when I was in the patent development group.
mm-hmm,
And my team engaged inventors and talked to them about their ideas, helped them refine their ideas. And then if they evaluated them and thought that they had merit,
mm-hmm.
we would mark them to pursue and direct them to the legal counsel, who would then, develop the patent application and file it. Now, what was unique within AT&T was we treated patents as products, and
Mm-hmm.
so therefore we had business people manage the whole process, from which
Yeah,
ideas to pursue to how we wanted to protect it to then how to monetize it. And
right.
we had actually, even, which is very unique, business people would go to examiner interviews and be part of the discussion of what the claims would be. So we were deeply involved with the
Yeah,
process. And again, I am not a patent attorney, for full disclosure, but
right,
I've got very familiar with the whole process.
right, right. Yeah, just that process of, sitting down, coming up with the ideas, working with intellectual property counsel, getting the patent, and then selling. I mean, you're in some of these instances, you get millions of dollars.
Yeah, we did very well in terms of, but whether selling it, in some cases we put it into a patent pool, SEP patents.
Hmm.
And in other cases, we would license it as part of a bundle, maybe as a technology bundle, something like that. So a number of different ways in which to monetize our intellectual property.
Right, right. I think, yeah, most people are, just not familiar with that
Whole process.
process and the
Hmm.
kind of value that you can generate just from, protecting your ideas.
Yeah. And
So,
then when I from there I evolved to innovation and managing an innovation program. And what's interesting, sometimes they seem like the same thing, but ironically, in most companies they aren't. You have people focused on doing ideas for patenting, and people doing ideas to help the company, whether that's a new product idea, whether that's cost savings, something like that. So within AT&T, they wanted somebody to create a program to focus in not on patents, but on ideas to create value for the corporation. And
right.
interesting time frame wise, patent ideas, as you know, John, tend to be out maybe 8 to 10 years. You really got to get ahead of the curve
Hmm.
in order to get a valuable patent. In the innovation side for the company, they're really looking for ideas that they can implement in the 1 to 3 year time frame. So a real interesting difference there in time frames.
Yeah, often, I mean, it takes 2 years for a patent to even issue
That's right.
after
It's not a
submitted.
quick process,
No,
for
not
sure.
not not.
And then a lot of times, as you know, if you get a patent that quickly on an idea that's starting to be implemented, then most people wonder whether that patent is even valid. So
Right,
it's
right.
very tricky. But in the innovation side, we're looking for ideas, not necessarily patent. It could be somebody saying, hey, the competition is doing this, we should be doing this. So totally different view. We also took a different approach to it in the sense we did a crowdsourcing approach. And for
Mm,
people who aren't familiar with crowdsourcing, this is sort of the idea that, hey, we let everybody see the ideas put in, everybody can comment on them. In our case, we actually let people, quote unquote, invest fictitious dollars in them. We had like a little stock market. And the idea was that maybe people would be more candid when they have, quote, unquote, money involved with it, even though it was fictitious money. And,
mm,
and that was a great experiment. We did learn some interesting things there. Um, but in retrospect, I think my takeaway was that actually the way we did it for the patent side actually worked better.
mm.
Having people share ideas privately actually works better than having people share publicly. And you might say, why is that?
Yeah, why is that?
Well, it turns out that one, people tend to be nervous about sharing their ideas. It's almost like imagine somebody asking you to
Mm,
sing in front of a huge audience, unless you're a professional singer, you probably aren't very comfortable with that. And
right.
with ideas and sharing ideas, people have some ideas about, whether this would be valuable or not, but it's a, totally different thing when you put it out there to a whole crowd. The other
Sure.
piece, which is really important, is what I've seen is inventors tend to make eliminate some of the assumptions. Assumptions are like blinders. Once you
Mm,
start doing assumptions, you can't see things. And
hmm.
so what happens is a lot of times inventors take some, assumption and decide that that doesn't apply for whatever reason.
Hmm.
And it usually is very hard, especially in a corporate environment, when there's some assumption that everybody's agreed to. We
Hmm.
don't, that, I'll throw out the classic one, nobody would use cellular for regular voice calls because landline service is so much better that, nobody would replace their landline with a cell phone. That was for a long time in the landline side. That was the belief. Oh no, why
Yeah,
would anybody want a poor quality cellular call? No, they'd never do that. And of course, we know they did do that. So
right.
that's the thing that's really hard. If you have a crowd, and we did see this quite a bit, is an inventor would propose an idea, and immediately everybody would jump on that inventor saying, no, 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 that doesn't happen. Everybody knows, people won't do that. That's not what we do, blah, blah,
Mm,
blah. And so they can't get over this assumption piece that this inventor has just ignored. And so it
mm,
really worked out better to have them talk to us one-on-one so that we could understand, well, why is it you don't think this assumption applies? Help us understand what has changed or why, whether it's a legal assumption, whether it's, a marketing assumption, whatever the assumption is, help. And that worked much better. And again, you got to keep in mind that people are throwing out ideas. Many times the ideas won't work. I mean, it's hard to
yes.
come up with new ideas and always have them successful.
Hmm.
There's a lot of new ideas, but they're just not always successful.
Hmm.
So, and sometimes it takes, a little market research to say, will people really want it that way? I don't know. And in other cases, you might have a good idea. You thought the product should be blue. Turns out it should have been red, but it was still a good idea. You just slightly off, need to be tuned. Well, that's where the crowd wasn't very, sympathetic. There are some cases where the crowd might have given some good suggestions, but in general, it's just not. We found it just wasn't the best way to work it, even though we were getting like 500 ideas a month. So we were getting a tremendous amount of ideas, but we
Wow.
were finding that the
Wow.
crowd was very hard
From
on
how
people's
many,
ideas.
from how many employees?
We had about 13,000 employees at the time,
Okay.
somewhere around there.
Wow.
We tried to focus more on management employees, but
Right. But 13,000, so all 13,000 employees were participating in this program.
well, not necessarily all 13,000, but a lot of them were. We really
Wow.
had a very good engagement.
Wow.
So
So it's, you're working with the employees to, come up with new ideas and generating income from it. It's amazing, right? That's a great
yeah,
program.
it was good. We were generating income, cost savings. We even did things just to help, sort of a better society.
Hmm.
One example was just a case where administrative person, she had a son who was just learning how to drive, and she brought up the idea, which again, a lot of times it sounds obvious. She's like, "Hey, AT&T doesn't have any sort of program to prevent people from texting and driving. Shouldn't we have a program like that?"
Yeah.
And a lot of people looked at it and said, that really does make a lot of sense. And so we created a program called Drive Mode, which was very successful in
Yeah.
helping people put the phone down while they're driving.
Wow. Wow.
So just as an example.
That's very cool.
But from that, John, yeah, all that experience, both me being an inventor and then working with a lot of inventors in the whole process, I saw an opportunity there. And when I retired from AT&T, I said, something, two things. One, people have a lot of good ideas. There's no shortage of good ideas.
Yeah.
And then secondly, you need to have a process that effectively helps those ideas get
Hmm.
through the pipeline and implement it. And so I said, let me see if I can create a platform that does both those things,
And that,
helps grab ideas, help manage those ideas through the process.
right. So what kind of talk about one of the technical details of the platform a little?
So Inspire IP is a SaaS platform, traditional SaaS platform. We have a number of different ways in which inventors can engage with the platform, from just a website to a mobile app to within an application such as Microsoft Teams. So we provide a number of different ways to capture ideas, because we know ideas come at different places at different times. And we also know that inventors, particularly busy inventors, which most of them are, the best ones are notorious for saying, "Oh yeah, yeah, I'll get to that, but I'm busy right now. I'll do it next week," and then they
Yeah, but
just
they
forget.
completely forget about it, and then that idea is gone.
Exactly. Or what happens is then, as I'm sure all of a sudden they're launching the product, and they're like, "Hey, do we have any patents on this product?"
No
No,
patents.
no, we didn't do any filings. No, forgot. Oops. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That is when I saw your product, I was like, man, this is what we need in the industry. So often, I've worked with software developers that are ones in India, ones in Bangladesh, ones in London. It's
Mhm.
impossible to coordinate in all these time zones a meeting to talk to these software developers about the idea, what they're doing, and keep track of everything. I mean, there's just email chains, of tons of
Exactly. Exactly,
emails. How,
John.
how do I organize this on my docket? I need to be able to, write that patent for them and do the best possible, get the best possible protection for them. But how can I do that when I can't even organize a meeting or organize my notes, about the software development? And the there is no system right now that exists to kind of support this inventive process.
Well, that's exactly right. One of the things we saw and I experienced was a lot of times when you're engaging with the inventors,
Mhm.
people send emails back and forth with information. And then whether it's inside counsel or whether it's outside counsel, now that information's hard to get to because it's an email.
Right?
And if you weren't privy to that, then now you've missed out on some of the conversation.
Hmm.
So one of the things we do with Inspire IP is we incorporate chat right into the application. So this way you can dialogue and talk about ideas and talk about different aspects of the invention, but it's still captured on the platform. And it goes back to, as John, maybe you remember, remember we used to have folders that would have, the specification, the correspondence, and all right there. But we're doing the same thing, only obviously in a digital format. So now you can see if there's any chats there. You can see what was put in the disclosure. You'll see attachments. They're
Hmm.
all there. And one of the other things we do is we keep a timeline of events that go on, so you know what happened when and who touched the file and all that.
Right.
We also provide continuous status. Because
Mhm.
as an inventor, I remember I always wanted to know what's going on. I haven't heard anything. What's going on? Who has it? What's, and
Right.
as part of the patent team, I always want to know, quite honestly, what's outside counsel doing? Have they had the disclosure meeting with the inventors? Have they looked at it? Have they approved it? All these things. Everybody wants to know, and we keep that information always there and available so that no need to call anybody to find out what's going on.
Yeah, yeah, especially when you've got groups, teams that are working across, 5 time zones.
Like, exactly.
It's really difficult. Yeah, well, I was pretty amazed by the product. Just so people know where they can check it out, it's at www.inspireip.com.
That's right. Yep. We're happy to tell you more about it. We also have, we have both the innovation side and we have the idea side. So again, if you want just to gather ideas to help the company be better, either looking for new product ideas, cost savings ideas,
Mhm.
uh, maybe just a better process, you know, you can use the platform for that too. So
Right,
it's very flexible platform. We can customize it in terms of what information you want to capture. And of course, everybody has a slightly different process. We can modify it to whether you use a review committee or whether you have individual people make the decision, whether you route things based on business unit, based on location, based on technology. We can incorporate all those things in to make sure the system works the way you guys want to operate.
great. All right. Well, thanks for taking the time to talk to me today, Sam. Appreciate it. And we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you, John. Enjoyed it. Take care.
Yeah, bye bye.